Great. Okay, everyone, welcome to the 19.2 Infragistics webinar. My name is Jason Beres, and I'm a Senior VP here at Infragistics, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Cool. I think everyone should be able to see my screen. If not, Brian, you're unmuted, so you'll be able to tell me if you can't see my screen. But I think you can see my PowerPoint, and I want to welcome everyone today. We're going to talk about 19.2. We have a big release. This is our second release of the year for the version numbers like 19.1, 19.2. But as most of you know who have been using a lot of our modern products, we've been releasing some of them almost on a monthly basis. So there's a lot going on with especially a lot of the modern web. So today we have a few folks with us online. Here's our emails. Take a screenshot or write these down. Feel free to email any of us as well. There's a chat window. We have a bunch of people available on the chat today. So please, if you have questions, feel free to answer or ask, and we have all the guys here to answer them. So my name is Jason Beres. Brian Lagunas, who many of you know, is on the line as well. George Abraham, many of you have met before. And then Konstantin Dinev is our Director of Product Development. He's also on the line with some of his team, and they focus primarily on our web products as well as Indigo.Design. Obviously, George Abraham is our Senior UX Architect and Product Owner on Indigo.Design. He's going to walk us through some new stuff today. And then Brian is a Product Owner across everything XAML, Blazor. He's also doing all of our developer relations. He started some new office hours that we do monthly now. He also has Twitch live streams every Tuesday. So if you're interested in registering for any of those, please email Brian at blagunas@infragistics.com, and he can send you links to where to sign up and all that other stuff. So of course, everything I'm going to talk about today is at infragistics.com. So if you go to our homepage, you get links to everything. The other area is our blogs. We have a bunch of blogs. I'm going to show you a couple today where there's a lot more detail versus what we can go through in an hour, because we do have a lot to cover and there's a lot of demos. So in 19.2, essentially we have three areas that we focused on. The first one was .NET Core 3 support across the board. If you remember in 19.1, we started to talk about .NET Core 3. It was still not released yet. It is officially released. We have been working with the final bits for a while, and so we have support across the board. Brian's going to show you some of that support in WPF as far as some improvements there. But if you're doing .NET Core 3 for Rich Client or for MVC, all of our components now are .NET Core 3 compliant. And the cool thing with that is Blazor. Brian's going to talk to you about Blazor today in his demos, or give you a demo of what we're doing with Blazor, because it's pretty exciting what's going on there. And we're looking forward to the WebAssembly release early next year from Microsoft to kind of round out that platform support. So that's a lot of the modern web, but also we've been focusing on Angular and React. We shipped a brand new platform for web components. So web components are the ultimate browser standard or web standard for framework agnostic JavaScript widgets. So if you want to do framework, you want to use Angular, great. If you want a library with some capabilities and use React or Vue or something like that, great. If you don't want to do any of that, web components is your option. And what we did there with web components is shipped everything that we're doing in Blazor and React, we're doing in web components as well. So we have a pretty robust offering there. And then finally, I mentioned George is going to walk you through the third big area that we worked on, which is Indigo.Design. So we've done a lot of work on the UX and features there. So we think you'll be happy with what's going on. So let's kick this off with some of the new stuff in Ignite UI. I'm going to rifle through some slides just so we can get to the demos, and then the guys will show some of the demos, and all of this is available online as well. And if you want the deck, we'll send that in a follow-up email at the same time. So with web components, like I mentioned, all the cool stuff that we're doing for React and Blazor ships in web components. So data grid, all the charting, tree map, all of the new stuff that we shipped in data visualizations, plus things like spreadsheet, Excel library, geospatial map. So if you want to build a high performance business application and web components is your target, we have everything that you need. So if you think about you want to have some future proof of your platform, you don't want to, or you want to ensure that, hey, I don't want to be a victim of an Angular upgrade or a framework change that management makes 3 years from now. Web components is sort of that way to go. While not as popular today, it is something that will continue to gain popularity over time. We've gotten some customer inquiries about it, so we decided to make sure that we support this platform as well moving forward. So web components, pretty exciting. I'll show a few demos of that in a little bit. Ignite UI for React. We're continuing to do a ton of work in React. And the nice thing is anything we do for the platforms of React, Blazor, or web components, they all benefit. So our strategy here is to ensure that these 3 products are in sync 100% with all of the features, all the capabilities, all the samples, etc. Angular is a little bit different because we built Angular. It's material based and it's built on the Angular framework. That product is on like a different path. Blazor, React, and web component, we've basically started with a web component infrastructure, which gives us the ability then to make those components work in pretty much any platform that we want. But from the customer feedback from the very beginning, teams doing Angular wanted it to be Angular. They wanted a material-based product, which is the direction we went. And so if you're doing Angular, we're a little bit further ahead there. We've been working on that for probably 12 or 15 months more than these other platforms, but they'll all catch up and they all really have good support today. So in React, we've got some continuing to add more demos and samples. We have some new features in the grid. I'll show a couple of demos of these, and then Tree Map is a new control, highly requested control that we've shipped across the board, and then a Zoom slider component, which really helps out in things like charting, financial charting, anything with the time series, or if you want to do some really clever filtering on a grid with the slider, you can do some cool things with that component as well. Ignite UI for Angular. Tons of stuff going on with Angular. This product is in a really hyper release mode. So we are shipping mostly on a monthly basis. The latest release, we have multi-row layout, grid row drag and drop enhancements, tree map. We've added a bunch of new support for copy and copy to the clipboard. We have a new advanced filter dialog. We shipped a Fluent design theme. So it really can make your app look like a Fluent app in Windows, which is pretty slick. So because it's material based, we follow material UI, but we've also done extensive support for theming, so you can make this product or make your app look really however you want. And even at the simplest level, we've done things in the data grids and all of the components for display density, which allows you to have a compact display density, a cozy display density, or a standard material display density. So if you want to fit more data on the screen without really mucking with the theme at all, just change that one property and you can do that. So we're really focused on ensuring that while this is Angular and it is material based, we want you to make it look however you want. And then of course, because it's Angular, you get all the benefits like progressive web apps and all the good stuff that goes along with Angular as well. We've shipped a multi-view calendar. This means that you can have multiple months and do range date selections in those months. So if you think about you're booking an airline or a hotel and you have the begin date or the end date, check-in, check-out, start, end, you can do that now with multiple calendars in a drop-down. And then we added the Sparkline visualization. All this is available in the blogs. I will bring up that blog in a second as well because you can see more detail. The tree map, I just wanted to bring this up real quick. The tree map ends up being pretty nice because you can use it for financial displays, for our financial data. You can do it for really any type of data where there's a hierarchical view and you want to drill in. So this is actually a really cool control. We've had it in WPF and Windows Forms for a while. We had it in beta in JavaScript for quite a while, and we rounded it out and fixed it up and finally shipped it across every platform now. So it ends up being a pretty cool control for everyone. And then of course, Blazor, I mentioned this a few times. Brian will show some demos here, but Blazor ends up being something that is going to be critically important, especially to the Visual Studio developer moving forward. And we understand that. So we are on a path to have a full RTM version of Blazor, of our Blazor product in Q1, which means all the samples, all the docs, plus WebAssembly support, which is pretty much one of the more exciting things about Blazor. But the cool thing about Blazor is that if you're a Visual Studio developer and you weren't really running to learn Angular or React and didn't want to get into that, you want to stick with C#, you want to stick with what you know, Blazor is the perfect on-ramp to single-page modern web applications for you. So we think Blazor is really going to have a huge impact on the market in the coming years, and especially after Q1 when WebAssembly ships, because then you get the benefit of a 100% client-side WebAssembly execution of your app. So it's pretty slick and exciting. So with that, let me jump into some demos. The first thing before I actually show any demos, I want to bring up Infragistics.com again. And on Infragistics.com, underneath Learn and Support, you've got the blogs. So everything that we're talking about today is in the blogs. So there's this generic 19.2 blog that I did, but then we get into some details here. So here's the Web Components blog. Here's Brian's Blazor blog. Rado posted a 19.2 for Angular blog. We also happened to ship a new Reveal update, which is our BI dashboarding solution. That was in November. But if I drill into the Angular blog, what you see here is a ton of detail with really well done with animated screens of all of the features that we shipped, descriptions, links to everything. So we can't do the products justice in these quick webinars, but if you go to the blogs, you'll see everything. Like this is a nice example of the Fluent. Here's your multi-month calendar, etc. And then because there was really too much, there's also links to all of the other stuff that we added. So there is a ton of stuff that we added. So please check out these blogs because they go to a whole nother level of detail. And so Learn and Support, click blogs, and you're there. So one of the things that I always like to show when I'm talking to customers, and I want to show it again in this webinar, is this killer sample. It's in the sample browser. This happens to be the full screen view of it, but this shows off sort of the grid and all of the cool things that it can do. So for example, this grid has a hierarchical view, and you can see I'm grouping by contract and type, but if I want to kill those and kind of put them back up again, it's a simple drag and drop experience. If I wanted to do some rich filtering, we have our Excel style filter, which gives you the ability to do any type of advanced filtering, column pinning, column hiding, etc. So I pin that column, now it's over to the left. I can do custom templates. So you can see here in my group areas, we've got this templated nicely. I can select all rows or deselect all rows, collapse all, expand all. I can show our dark mode, which is really nice, and it's a built-in theme that we support. We also have the toolbar, which is built in, and it has nice drop downs to show hidden columns, to show and hide columns, pin columns to the left, also do things like exporting to Excel. This guy also lets you add as many rows of data up to 10,000 with real-time updates if you want. So here as I'm scrolling, you can see, well, on the webinar, it might come across a little jaggy, but it's like buttery smooth scrolling. So this really represents what we're trying to do with these grids, is give you all of the line of business capabilities that you need to deliver great experiences to your customers. So when you go to the sample browser for Angular, you see so much more than that because we've added so many more features to the grid over the last 18 months. And we really think we're kind of beyond that 80-20 rule of what people need to build these great experiences. But as I scroll down, you can see all the features on the left-hand side of the grid. And then anything that's new ends up being a feature that we just add. So for example, clipboard interactions is a new feature. I mentioned this earlier. And what this allows me to do is do a range select on the clipboard, and I can copy the header labels, copy column formatters, etc. So all of this stuff lets me select, I'll do a copy, and if I, open up Excel, for example, let's go ahead and open up Excel, and should have had this open. Sorry, I meant to do that beforehand. And I'll do a new Excel spreadsheet. And then when I paste this in, what you see is I get the data, all the formatting, including the column headers. So it's more than just a simple copy paste. You actually get exactly what your users would actually want. Things like advanced filtering. I showed that Excel style filtering. We have row level filtering. The nice thing about our filtering UI is that it can, it's all API driven as well. So you can have, as much external UX that you want to drive filtering inside the grid. That filtering can be remote filtering. It can be client side filtering. It really doesn't matter. What we recently did was added this advanced filtering dialog. So for example, I can go ahead and do an advanced filter and do different and or groups based on conditions. So here I did an and group. Let me do an or group, and I want to do order date. It's all based on the data type. I get the correct filter. So I want to do last month, and I'll add that guy, and then I can add a condition, and I want that condition to be unit price. And again, these are numbers, so it can be greater than, and I'll do 3 and check that in. And you can see what the filter's doing. It's giving me a nice UX. It's showing me all of the chips in a chip view, what I filtered, the type of data it is, numeric, string, and date time. The blue and the pink are showing me the anding or oring groups. And now when I apply this, the grid filters out exactly what I asked for. So we've gone beyond your typical filter experience to give you a really rich advanced filtering UI capability. Now, if I want to go back, I can clear the filter, and there you go. One of the reasons we did this is one of our customers is a big 911 provider in the US, and they have all these 911 operators, and they need to do very advanced filtering to make sure that people are going in the right places when there's emergencies and where people are located. So that was sort of a reason that we drove to a feature like that. If I scroll down, I will show you real quick just to expand the tree grid. One of the nice things about the grid in Angular and all of our components is that it is the same as the flat grid. There's no difference in the capability. So you'll see the same features, the same new marks, and all of this stuff, because the core of the grid ends up being exactly the same. And then of course the same for the hierarchical grid. So the hierarchical grid was something that we shipped last year. Actually, it was earlier this year. But the nice thing about the hierarchical grid is you can basically do client-side operations, remote operations in a way that would show multiple grids in a master detail UX. So here I've got my customers, and as I drill in, I've got orders, and as I drill in, I've got order details. So you get that typical hierarchical experience, and you get the same features like expand all, collapse all, the things I kind of showed earlier. Let me scroll down into the Sparkline. So the Sparkline is new across the board, and it's your typical Sparkline. Basically, you take a range of data in a column, and it displays the Sparkline across in another column. And these are coming in an area view, a column, a line, or a win-loss. So these are great mini displays to put in any UX that you ship. And in fact, a lot of the samples that we're showing now, we include the Sparkline in the grid, so you kind of get the idea of the Sparkline. The tree map, I showed this in an animated GIF, but again, this component comes across in every platform that we ship now. So you can see here as I'm slicing and squaring and doing all this with the data, and if I click something, I can drill into it, I can drill back up. So you have a really good interactive experience of hierarchical data in a nice visualization. So I'm not going to go through all of the Angular demos. There is a ton to show. I recommend going to the blog and going through it if you're doing Angular development to get an idea of some of the stuff that you can do. But I do want to show another feature that we're shipping hopefully this month. We've we've kind of done it. We're at the mercy of Angular 9. Angular 9 is shipping soon, and we're working with the Angular team on the upgrades for Angular 9. And with that will come a whole new release of a bunch of new stuff. But what we're doing with the grid now is we're adding directives, which will give you more of an Excel-like experience. So you'll notice here I just selected a range select in the grid, and I have this quick analysis button, which is very similar to what Excel looks like. And the first thing that we're shipping is the ability to do a range select and then just display visualizations based on that. So your customers will be able to do range selects, pick a visualization. So for example, here, if I don't like that visualization, I can pick another visualization. And it's just a whole nother way to make the grid experience more interesting and more of a data analysis UX for your customer. So this is like the first thing that we're doing inside of the quick analysis widget, and we're going to continue to add capabilities to this to just really give the grid what your users want. What your users really want is to display a bunch of data and then to do a lot with it. Like over and over, it's how can we make the grid be more like Excel? And that's our focus, and that's always been our focus. So we're just going to continue to do that. So moving on to web components, it's in our same main menu. You can see Angular, JavaScript, React, web components. I'll scroll down and you can see that in the homepage for the web components, we had a nice grid display with some cool stuff happening here. Scroll down a bit, it shows some charts, and then of course all of the components that we're shipping. So if I jump into the data grid, here we've got a grid with some templates. The nice thing about the grid for web components, for React, for Blazor, all of this is built with 100% performance in mind. So it is a grid that fully supports remote data, load on demand data at its core. We didn't bolt anything on after we built like a table. This is a grid that is designed for high performance, virtualized, remote data on demand, and it's super fast. So you can see here as I scroll, I have buttery smooth scrolling, but if I scroll really fast, you may be able to see the gray boxes that are popping up, and you may not over the WebEx, but that means that, hey, I'm going to get more data. And the nice thing is we've done some better calculations than most on ensuring that the scroll position of your scroll bar is in the right location based on the data. What I've seen in some other vendors is you scroll and then the grid pauses, it goes back, it loads, and then the scroll bar kind of moves back up to the top, and your users really have no idea what's going on. So this ends up being something built into our grid. It's actually really slick, and this is framework free, framework dependent. This is all web component. Here's a nice example of the same grid using the Sparkline component with other templates. And of course, this grid you can see has all of the features that you would expect in a line of business grid, things like column moving. So here, if I move this column over to the left, you can change things like the separator widths. You can have different animation modes. So I'll change this to a slide over. The scrolling mode can be deferred or none. So if you want it to be immediate as I drag, you can do that, or you can have it deferred where it's kind of dragging and then it kind of slides over. Sorting, resizing, all of the things that you would expect. We actually have row grouping, which is pretty slick. This row grouping works very similar to how your grouping works on a tree view or a hierarchical view. So you have expand and collapse modes, and if I scroll down, you can see all of my column headers and then the data underneath. I can collapse and uncollapse these guys. So you can see that the UX changes based on what I do. And here's more of a combined mode. So I just see all of my column headers in the group header versus having multiple group headers. So really, depending on the UX that you want, it's really up to you. And then we go down, you can see we have all of the data charts. We have tree map, geospatial map, Excel library, bullet graph gauges. So everything that we've shipped in the React product is in the web components product, which is really, really sweet. And in fact, if I go to Ignite UI for React and I scroll down, you will see that it looks very similar. And I go to Data Grid, and on the top it's React Components Data Grid, but all the samples are the same. All of the features are the same. Basically, what's different is the documentation, how to get started. So for example, getting started with the React product will be a little bit different than getting started with the Angular product or the Blazor product or the web component product, but we have all that documentation in here. So npx, create React app, my app. So it's just a different way of getting started, but all the features and all the capabilities are there in the product across the board. So with that, that's a quick run through of some of the newer modern web stuff that we shipped. I recommend reading the blogs, as I said, to learn all of the details and features. Read the getting started for each one of these guys, and then go through the samples. One of the other things real quick before I pass off to Brian, if I go to reference applications and I go to React or Angular, I'll click React first. We have two reference applications here. One is a React stock chart, which is a really nice example of doing financial charting. We have in React as well a live grid, which is very similar to the Angular demo I just did, but although this one is in React and you can launch the samples right from here. And then at the same time for Angular, I will click Angular. We have a few more samples, our marketing dashboard, the same fintech example I just showed, another live data sample, a cryptocurrency app, a people app, a budget app. But all of these are meant for you to download the sample, get the source code, and then start going through it and essentially putting your own data into these applications so you can see how they work yourselves. And so in this guy here, I can change my date ranges and kind of see how things work, and it's really beautiful, and everything just looks great in these samples. So I highly recommend you start with going to the learn and support blogs or reference applications, and then you can get all of this stuff. So with that, now I'll pass it over to Brian, who's going to walk us through some of the .NET Core 3 stuff as well as Blazor. So Brian, Brian, make presenter. Brian, you are the presenter now.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you.
All right, let me try to determine which monitor I'm going to share. Let me know when you can see my Visual Studio.
We see it.
Okay, perfect. So what I want to start out talking about first is our .NET Core 3 support for both our WinForms and WPF products. Now, if you are a desktop developer, .NET Core is kind of a big deal now, right? We're getting away from the coupling of the .NET framework and being coupled to an OS version and a .NET framework version. Microsoft put a lot of work into making that more decoupled, and we created this .NET Core 3. And if you by chance upgraded your Visual Studio the other day, you now have .NET Core 3.1. The app I'm working with today is just a .NET Core 3.0. I'll edit my project files to prove that this is a .NET Core 3 WPF project, so very simple. And what I want to point out is we are now 100% .NET Core 3 friendly. I want to point out the toolbox first, take a quick look at what's available in the toolbox for .NET Core 3 project. This is all the common Microsoft controls. Now what I want to do is I want to show you how you would utilize our .NET Core 3 version of our WPF product. Now it's important to realize when you want to use the Infragistics WPF product for .NET Core 3, it's only available via a NuGet package. Okay, now the reason I pointed out the toolbox is because you notice there was no Infragistics controls in there that you would get, like if you were in a .NET framework, you would all of a sudden see all these controls show up. Well, you don't get that with .NET Core 3. Instead, you have to go through a NuGet package. When you install the product, we create two NuGet sources for you. We'll create a local NuGet source that basically it's local on your hard drive, and we create a NuGet source that points to our public licensed NuGet feed. I'm always going to use my local one, and I'm just going to pick Gauges for an example. I'm going to install the Gauges NuGet package into this product. This should go fairly quickly, and looks like we are done. Yep, we're done. So now what's really cool is now if we go ahead and open up our toolbox, we will see that the toolbox is now populated with controls based on the NuGet packages that I've added. I added the gauges NuGet package, so now I see all the controls that are in that specific package. In this case, I'm going to choose a radial gauge. I'm going to click, drag that over into my design surface, and we will see my radial gauge up here in the designer. Now, what's also really cool about this is besides the controls just working as they should, right? All of our tooling works as well. So you may or may not have seen the control configurator. So if I select the control name, you'll see the light bulb on the left-hand side. I can configure this control, and I believe it should open up on the screen. And this is essentially a WYSIWYG design surface that allows you to create data bindings and really just focus on designing the control. We have some quick sets. For example, I can apply this quick set. It adds default styling and ranges and all this great stuff. I can apply and a close, and it's going to generate all the code for me. And there is the component. I'll go ahead and run it just to prove that it actually runs. But essentially, it's a what you see, what you get designer. And within seconds, I was able to add a NuGet package, drag that NuGet package from the toolbox onto my design surface. The XML&S namespace is added. The code snippet for the control is added. I launched the control configurator, and I designed it within under a minute, right? Now, this is a very simple example. If you're looking for a more complete application experience, on GitHub, we do have a full-blown application called IG Outlook. This is also a .NET Core 3 project. So if I edit this project file, you'll see this is a .NET Core 3. The entire thing is .NET Core 3. I will run this application. It's available on NuGet for you to download, get the source code, see how we built it. If you own our products, it'll just work. Otherwise, you'll probably have to download the trial so you can get access to the NuGet packages. But this is the application. It looks just like Excel. It looks just like Outlook. You can reply to emails, send emails. Of course, these are all fake emails, so you're not going to actually be sending emails to your server or anything. But I just wanted to point that out. So next up is something I'm really excited about, and it is our Blazor controls. So right now they are in preview, but the great news, I'm just gonna go ahead and jump right to it. It's available on NuGet right now. So if you were to open up your browser and go to NuGet.org, just search for Infragistics.Blazor, and then expand the documentation tab here. You can see how that expands and collapses. Expand that. You'll see the controls that we're shipping. This is a preview. I just want to point out this is a preview. It's preview quality. There will be problems. There will be bugs, but please let us know if you do run into something. Let me know, because we still want to track any issues you run into. We also give you examples. So if you click on this check out the samples link, it's going to open up a GitHub link that provides you the sample I'm going to show you right now. So make sure you click on that, and then simple instructions on how to actually use the product. It's pretty simple. You'll add the NuGet package to your project, then you'll add a script to your host CSHTML file. That's if you're on the server side, right? And make sure you add it before the Blazor, okay? And then you're up and running. And so what does this app look like? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and run this application. I'll wait for it to pop up into my browser. Here we go. Now this is a very simple Blazor app. I didn't have a ton of time to throw something super complicated together. However, I will say that these controls are the exact same controls that you would get for web components and for our React product. So you can actually go look at one of the React or web component samples and essentially copy and paste the code and modify it to be C# friendly. But as you can see, here's our grid here. This specific grid has 100,000 records, and as you can see, well, I don't know how it comes over on what is this, WebEx? This is WebEx? A webinar. This is GoToWebinar. It might be a little sluggish on GoToWebinar, but trust me,
it's actually really fast. It looks great.
Oh, is it? Oh, that's good to know. I like to call this ludicrous speed, because this is just ridiculously fast scrolling 100,000 records in a browser. I mean, that's ridiculous. So with this product, you're going to get the data grid. You're gonna get the category chart. The category chart is just like you would have in the web components. It's just like we have in WPF and WinForms and Xamarin. It's the same category chart we have on every single platform. Same thing for the financial chart. You know, we can add our Bollinger Bands, we can add our quadratic fit trend lines. We have our zoom bar at the bottom. This works just like you would expect if you have experience with this control on any other platform. It's the same. The API is the same. The feature set's the same. It's all the same. Donut chart, pie chart, spark lines. Jason just went over the spark line. As you can see, it is the exact same control. It looks the same. It works the same. The API is the same. A bullet graph, linear gauge, radial gauge, and a map component. So that is our Blazor product. It's in preview right now. Please, it's freely available to you on NuGet. Give it a try, download the sample, give me your feedback, let me know what you think. We plan on shipping this Q1 of next year, probably, I'll say April-ish, is I think we're gonna target for a release for this. And other than that, I'm going to hand it over to George to demo Indigo. So let me go ahead and change presenter here. All right, George, you should have it.
Sounds good. Main screen.
Yep, we see it, George.
All right, perfect. So as Jason already mentioned, that we have been really working hard to change the experience or the user experience on our Indigo.Design cloud. But if you're not familiar with Indigo.Design, Indigo.Design is our solution to start your designs in Sketch using the same design system for designers. The same design system is also available for developers for using our Ignite UI for Angular. And what it allows you to do is start your designs using the same Ignite UI for Angular components while you're designing inside of Sketch. Continue with that story to the next pillar of our solution, which is usability studies in the cloud, which allows you to validate the designs, whether they are actually doing what it's supposed to do. And once you are done with that, you can actually generate the code assets for Angular directly in Visual Studio Code. With this solution, what we're trying to achieve is that you can continue to use the tool which is meant for that particular activity. So Sketch is great for designers, and you can continue to create those designs in Sketch. Visual Studio Code is great for developers, and we don't even want you to leave that experience in order to get the designs which were created in Sketch. And all of this is made possible by our Infragistics cloud or our on-prem server, which allows you to do the collaboration and validation of those designs. And that is the solution which sits in between and connects the desktop app, like a Sketch desktop app, with a Visual Studio desktop app. So to give you just a quick context, let me just show you what it looks like in Sketch. So this is like a design which has been created in Sketch using the same Ignite UI components. And once you kind of install our Ignite UI Indigo.Design UI kit, you would see that your designers are not going to create things from scratch. Instead, they would just use the insert menu, just like a regular WYSIWYG builder. You would use our components, and every component you see here, they are exactly the same components you have in Ignite UI for Angular. And which is why we call it a design systems approach, where designers and developers are pretty much using the exact same components and not trying to reimagine the basic building blocks. So let me focus more on our Indigo.Design cloud here. Once you've finished creating your designs inside of Sketch, the best way to get feedback is through our plugin. And that's how we are kind of making sure that you never have to leave the tool of your choice, but still get all the benefits of the cloud. And with our Indigo.Design plugin, you can just come in here and you can just publish this prototype, and that basically publishes it to the cloud, and you basically get a URL which you can share with stakeholders. So once you have published these designs in the cloud, let me just switch over to our cloud here. So this is the experience in our cloud, and right now you're not seeing anything because this is the vanilla experience you get when you first time come to the cloud. But if you have already published something in this cloud, you would actually see a slightly different experience. But we have tried to make it easy for you to understand what is the purpose of this cloud. We've talked about this collaboration, which means that any workspace we have in this cloud you can go ahead and invite your team members so they don't actually they can get notified whenever things change in the cloud. But on top of that, we have just made it really easy for you to get the assets required for you to actually invest in the Indigo.Design solution. So for example, you can download our Indigo.Design UI kit, which is what I was showing you in Sketch, the files you're seeing here, the components. You can get it directly from our cloud. The Sketch plugin, which is used to publish those designs into our cloud, that's also available right here. And we have also made it very easy for you to get directly to our help documentation, which is pretty intensive to basically help you understand how designers can actually make the best use of the Indigo.Design UI kit in order to facilitate code generation. So let me show you an example of what it looks like when there are things in this design space. So I'm just going to switch over to another collaboration space. So I'm just going to team space. And here you can see this is the design I was showing you inside of Sketch. Is the very same design, and it's now available in the cloud. And in the cloud, you can then go ahead and inspect this design both from the navigation capabilities in terms of how the design flows. So you do not need Sketch as a developer in order to see what the design is actually supposed to do. And if you have added navigation links inside of Sketch, they're automatically inherited into this app in the cloud. So you can actually see what those interactions or navigations look like. But on top of that, you can actually add new ones. So if you want to say, hey, I want to add a new interaction, you can just simply click drag on this design area, add an interaction, and connect it to a different screen. And that's how simple it is for prototyping in the cloud. Of course, we also support inspect for any designs which have been published from Sketch. What that allows you to do is that say that you want to just quickly hand code something and you want to get the visual specifications for the design created, you do not actually have to create any separate document. Just publish it to the cloud, and now just like that, you get all the specifications directly on Hover. And when you select that, you can actually see all the CSS you need to recreate this thing in whatever app you're trying to create. So in this case, this is the color, this is the font. You also see all the relative spacing information. So you can say, okay, that's the margin of the padding for this UI is 32 pixels. You can just inspect it directly from the UI itself. Now, as I said, the basic benefit you get by publishing into the cloud is that you can now send a link directly to the stakeholder, and they can basically come in here. You copy this link, you publish it in here, and they can load up this design directly in the cloud and give you feedback on this design. And this is great for ad hoc feedback for people who are actually part of the design crew, who can come in and say, okay, I want to make some provide you some feedback in context. They can just add comments directly, and you would get notified about what those changes are, and you can make changes to them in Sketch and just republish this design to update this design spec. And we take care of all the stuff related to the versioning of this particular document, so nothing is ever destroyed. Everything is maintained in the cloud, so you never have to worry about it. But the real kicker for us in the cloud is that although the Indigo.Design solution is all about creating designs in Sketch, validating those designs in the cloud, and then code generation, the validation is what we do with the help of usability testing. And if you're not familiar with the usability testing, it's instead of letting people just go wild on trying out your design, you can actually ask your users or your stakeholders to do specific things with the design. And that's what this usability test area is. So if I create a new usability test, it gets added to the second section here. And you can see that there are a couple of designs already in here which have not yet been started. So let me show you what it looks like. So I'm opening up a design here. And this is where you can actually set up how people should complete this particular task so that you can validate whether the design is working the way you expect it to. So I can just come in here, I say add a new task. I say, how will you change the profile information? And then you can just use the design as you expect to use it. They'll log in, they should click on this URL. And as you can see on the left area, we are actually recording the path which is required for you to complete this particular task. Once you're done setting up multiple tasks, you can set up any number of tasks here. You can go to the test settings, you can change any welcome messaging you want your people to see. thank you message when they complete this task. But once you're ready, you can just click Start Testing and send this URL to your stakeholders. So instead of just adding comments to the design, what they would see is something completely different. I'm going to paste in that URL here. And they get into this whole participation experience. Here, the tool already knows that I am the owner of this test. So do I really want to take part? I say, yeah, take part. And now you can see that they are actually trying to do a specific set of tasks with your design. So I can hit continue. We have this extension here, which allows us to capture both the audio, video, face camera, whatever the user allows you to whatever the user selects to provide. And when they start this test, they are actually doing this in a very step-by-step fashion. It's like invite James to a new meeting, and then they will try to use the design. They click, figure out how to do it. All right, this is fine. Okay, I can give them feedback. This task was pretty easy. And go to the next task and next task till you're completely finished. So let me just say I'm done. I've completed all the tasks. And now is where the beauty of usability testing kicks in. Is let me show you what it looks like for a study which has more participation. So in this case, this particular app which I had created, it has around 12 people who took part in this particular test. And I can now look at see how they actually performed. So for the 4 tasks I had defined for this particular design, I can see that, okay, there are some of them are good success rates, some of them have poor success rates. But for each of these tasks, I can now see the exact funnel which happened for that particular study. So in this case, I can see 8 people just drop off this expected path very early. And I would like to say, okay, that's not good. I would have expected them to finish it completely. So let me pick up something much more simpler. Here you can see that this task had around 4 steps. 7 people just dropped off that funnel, and I'm curious what exactly happened. But we have actually taken care of segmenting your participants. So in this case, 4 of the 12 people, they actually completed it using the expected success path as you expected them to use it. And 6 of them actually did it, but they did it their own way. And 2 of them actually did not actually finish this particular study. So I can look at this alternate success path, and I can start seeing this legend here, which I can show you here. All the blue dots are what we expected them to do. The red dots are what they did on their own. And the orange square is just representing whether they asked for help. You know, they got stuck somewhere and they requested guidance, and it's basically shown in this pathway here. But once you have seen the funnel, you're curious about what exactly happened for this particular participant, you can just click play video, and this is where our usability capture comes in, where I can actually see a video replay with the video offered by the participant to see exactly how they used this particular design. This allows you to give great transparency into exactly what people did with your design. Once you're done and validated this particular approach, saying that this design is actually good, you're ready to actually proceed to the next step, that's where our third part of our pillar comes in, which is really about generating code from the same designs. And as I mentioned before, once you have published this design, you have a link which you had actually sent to stakeholders. The same link, developers can now use that link, open up Visual Studio Code, and we have an extension for Visual Studio Code. As I mentioned, we don't want you to leave the tool, and it's available right here. I've already installed it on my command palette. So this is, well, let me sign in again. Sign in. And what the developer can effectively do is take the same link for, sorry about that. All right. They can come in here, paste that same link, and open up that design which was created in Sketch directly in the cloud. And now you can see all the screens, and they never have to leave their IDE to get to this point. They can come in here. They say, okay, this is the component I need, the login screen area. I can select it, hit generate code assets. And just like that, we create this login screen widget directly inside of Visual Studio Code. And if you do npm start, it loads up pixel perfect every component which we have created directly in your browser, and you can see these are real components, and the developer never had to recreate the UI in order to get this pixel perfect design inside of Visual Studio Code. So that's a very quick review of the big changes we made in the cloud, but at the same time touching upon the big story of Indigo.Design, which starts in Sketch with our components, the same design system for designers and developers. They are able to test and validate the designs in the cloud, and we have this rich reporting on top of each of these designs, as I've shown you briefly. And then once you're confident in your design, you can just hand over the same link to a developer, and they don't have to manually recreate anything. Just get the design from the Sketch file using an extension, and then they're able to generate code directly from the cloud. So I'm going to pause here and just shift it over to Jason to wrap up this session here. So I'm going to go ahead.
So that was outstanding, George. Thank you for that demo. That is super exciting because Indigo.Design ends up being sort of this cornerstone of our story around design to code, design to developer sort of handoff. And as part of George's demo, that was a brand new UX that we're shipping actually in about a week. So if you go to Indigo.Design today, you're not exactly going to see that. You'll see it in about a week or so. We've completely redesigned the entire experience around usability studies and testing. But the cool thing is what you'll see at our next webinar for 20.1 is another experience inside of Indigo.Design, which is our app builder. So the app builder will allow you to have a toolbox and a WYSIWYG with basically the same experience you would get in Sketch or in Visual Studio, that would allow you to drag and drop, create screens and entire applications connected to data and get code. It's actually a running app. So we're building this IDE integrated into Indigo.Design Cloud, which is going to be super exciting for pretty much anyone who's trying to build single page web applications with Angular, React, Web Component, Blazor. V1, we're going to focus on Angular, and then we're going to add support for all of our other modern web platforms throughout next year. So this is in sort of an internal preview mode right now. If you are interested in taking part of our preview for this product, email Brian Lagunas, blagunas@infragistics.com, and he'll put you on the list, and he will be driving the preview with George to get all kinds of feedback and to get it into the hands of early adopters. So we're super excited about Indigo. It is a cornerstone of Infragistics' story for developer productivity and working with designers into the future and building apps very quickly, getting code, writing less code, doing usability studies, all that stuff kind of molds into it. So real quick recap, .NET Core 3 support across the board, a lot of work in modern web. We have new platform support for Blazor, Web Components, a lot of new features in Angular and React. And then of course, we just showed Indigo.Design. So the call to action, get Ultimate 19.2 today. Right off of our homepage, you can download a trial, or you can just log into your account to get the latest bits. Everything you saw today, with the exception of Indigo, is available. Like I said, Indigo will be in a week or so. I think we have the 15th or 17th as a date for that. But everyone on the email follow-up for this webinar will get that information. If you have any questions or feedback, please email any of us or sales. But my email is Jason B. You have Brian, you have George as well. And I want to thank everyone for coming today. We'll stay online to continue to answer some of the questions in the chat. But I will go on mute, and that's it. So thanks everyone.